Welcome back to Monday Mod Tips. Today we're going to talk about air restrictors. What they are, what they do, why, the pros and cons of removing them, and how to actually remove them. Now, the air restrictor is essentially a safety feature for the blaster. It prevents you from breaking the blaster by dry firing it. And the way it does that is it creates a seal at the base of the barrel between the plunger tube and the barrel, and this essentially creates an air brake. So as the plunger goes forward, as soon as the dart clears the AR, it seals and the air in here gets trapped and it stops the plunger before it slams into the top of the plunger tube. And then, since it's not a perfect seal, it slowly leaks out and the plunger head can then complete the rest of its motion. Now, this generally you only really see the true effect of this when the gun is dry fired. If you listen, you can kind of hear that squishy sound almost of the plunger not slamming into it full force. You can also actually see it slowing down and then finishing the rest of the movement considerably slower. This doesn't happen as pronounced when you're actually firing a dart, because the dart itself acts as kind of the cushion and keeps the air restrictor open until the plunger is fully completed. And this is a useful feature. It extends the life of the blaster considerably, especially with small kids who don't understand that you shouldn't dry fire a blaster. It keeps the blaster from breaking itself, essentially. It also does reduce the power of the blaster, but that is definitely a secondary feature. I don't believe that is the primary feature. If they wanted the blasters to be weaker, they'd just put in weaker springs. The AR is very definitely there to keep the blaster from breaking itself by being misused. Now we get into the more philosophical discussion, I suppose, and these are going to be my own opinions. Feel free to disagree with them if you like. The question of whether or not you should remove the ARs. And in some mods that we've done and that we will discuss in the future, you have to. The only way for the mod to work, you need to remove the air restrictor. In others, you don't have to, and frankly, I advise against it if you don't mod it past a certain point. A lot of people, the first mod that they do is to remove the AR. And if they haven't really increased the spring that much, that's probably not going to be all that detrimental. But if you have increased the spring and you removed the AR, you are going to reduce the life of the blaster. It is eventually going to cause it to break. You can mitigate this somewhat by padding the plunger head. But then again, now you've gotten into more complicated mods. You've removed the AR, you've increased the spring, you've padded the plunger head. At that point, you've started to balance out the cons of AR removal, which is, wear and tear on the blaster. But just taking out the AR, I don't believe it's worth it. I think you're going to get a couple of feet of extra range, you're going to get a couple of FPS, but you're going to significantly reduce the life of the blaster, and I don't feel that alone is worth doing it. If you're going to pat the plunger head and increase the spring, now that's not nearly as bad, and I can see that. And you definitely need to remove the AR if you brass the barrel. One of the first video, or last video I did, was how to brass barrels and breeches, and if you're going to do that, then you really need to remove the AR, because you need all of the extra power, and you need the power for the full length of the barrel. Nerf barrels by stock are not tight for the full length of the dart, or even the full length of the barrel. They're only tight for the last half inch, which is where the AR is actually engaged. And that's to hold the dart in place in order to keep the AR compressed. And if you start using worn out darts on stock blasters, you'll notice that the seal isn't good enough and the AR will just push the dart right back out again. And that's not a problem with the blaster, that's an issue with using worn out darts. And this is one of the reasons that we started brassing the barrels, in order to get a tight seal for the entire length of the dart. Well, first, it would get rid of that problem, but then you run into a different problem of, once the dart gets this far out of your brass barrel, the AR has now engaged and you're not getting all of the power. And at this point it becomes important, because if you don't have enough power, putting in a brass barrel can actually make the gun no longer functional. If you don't have enough power to get the dart out of the full seal of the barrel, it'll just get this far and stop. And so for brass barrel blasters, you do need to remove the AR. And at that point, you're really looking at a much more complicated mod. You've got the brass barrel, the removed AR, the padded plunger head, the upgraded upgraded spring, and the upgraded catch spring. And all of those 5 together are really the minimum you need to really heavily modify and properly modify a single-shot blaster. And for that, you do need to remove the AR. So let's talk about removing ARs from single-shot pistols. The problem with this is that every single one of them is ever so slightly different. And some of them, it's really easy to get the AR out, and some of them, it is very difficult, and some of them, you're going to need special tools. For some of them, and what's even more annoying is it varies sometimes from blaster to blaster that's the same make. So you can open up 5 different night finders, and some of them are going to be solvent welded. The whole barrel assembly will be solvent welded, and some of them won't. And there doesn't seem to be any pattern that I've been able to find as to which ones are and which ones aren't. So this is a night finder's plunger tube and barrel, and it is one that is easy to remove. The barrel up section is held on with friction clamps, and you can just twist it and it'll pop it loose, and then you can take the barrel off, and then you can take out the AR assembly, which is its own little thing, and it is usually, or at least I've never found one that was solvent welded together, but you can simply pull it apart, and that's all you have to do to take out the AR. So this is the actual AR, and of course it's got a very weak spring in there, and that's all you have to do to take it out. And that's one of the easy ones, and that's really, really nice. You can just take that out. It also gives you the barrel without any stuff in it, so you can put a brass barrel in there very easily. You can file all the way through it. It's very nice. You can cut the dart peg off if you want so that you can load Steffens or whatever else you want. I would recommend leaving the base that the peg is attached to, because that'll prevent you from accidentally vacuum loading your dart, sucking it back into the plunger tube, and then you have to take the whole thing apart to get it to work again. So on simple blasters where that whole thing comes apart, it's very easy to take apart. And that's probably why it is most people's first mod, because they can just pop the blaster open with a screwdriver, take that out, and they've done a mod. They've made their gun a little bit more powerful. And sure, it is a good place to start. But I would recommend taking the extra steps to do all of the other things. Pad your plunger head, brass the barrel, springs, all that. But taking out the easy ones, that's all there is to it. So if you don't have the luxury of being able to take it apart easily because it's solvent welded together or what have you, how do you get the AR out? And there's a number of ways to do it. Some of them are distinctly better than others. In the old days, we used a screwdriver and a hammer. And you can actually, just by putting a screwdriver down the barrel, you hammer out these 3 supports, and you can get the AR out that way. You can also sometimes do it from the back if you take out the 3 supports that are holding that plug thing in there out. But I really do not recommend doing this, because if you don't do it just right, you're going to break your plunger system, your barrel or your plunger, and then the gun will not work at all. It will be irreparable, and you'll have to replace it. So I do not recommend doing that unless you're sure that you can do it without breaking something. And I'm not going to demonstrate how to do that, because I really don't think that you should. All right, so how do you get the AR out if you're going to be doing a mod that you really need to do it on? Some blasters you can actually drill out through the barrel and the AR will come out because the AR is small enough. Others, the barrel is a smaller diameter than the AR is, and you're never going to be able to get it out. So you may have to go from the back, from the thing that the AR is pressing, the spring is pressing up against, that little cap. Which is what we're going to need to do on this one, because night finders, the AR is too tight for the base of the barrel. So we are going to come at it from the back side, through the plunger tube, and drill out all right. So we were in fact able to drill out the back of the plunger so that came all the way out. This is another thing you can do if you want to have an even longer brass barrel, but you don't want to have it sticking out. This will allow you to have a slightly longer brass barrel than you would have if you had kept the dart post in place. But that's kind of a personal preference on aesthetics. I actually don't mind having the brass stick out anymore. I used to, but I've strangely gotten over that. But this is the much safer and easier way to go about getting that to come out. Definitely the way I would recommend doing it. If you have the option, I don't think a drill and a half-inch drill bit is that out of the way of tools that you can be expected to have if you're going to be modifying Nerf guns. But that's how you do it with single-shot blasters. Magazine blasters are remarkably similar in many cases. Again, sometimes you can go through the barrel because of where the air restrictor is located and because of its size. Sometimes it will actually be the same diameter and you'll be able to get it out. I believe it is on this one because the air restrictor actually resides in this section, which is roughly the same size, though it may be there may be a lip that it's catching on and you'd need to drill out more than you'd really want. You can also get at it through the back if you really want to. This is a Stampede plunger tube that I long since gutted the rest of the parts, probably for repairs for ire. So we are going to try drilling it out from the back and see how that works out for us. Sure enough, there's still something in there. Let's see what happens if we go at it from the front. I've never actually taken out the air restrictor on a Stampede because I consider that to be a very bad idea. Excellent. So I drilled both from the back and from the front to get all of the parts of the air restrictor out, and I was able to do so without breaking anything or myself. And the nice thing about the Stampede is the way it's designed, you don't have to worry about vacuum loading because it has a gasket in there that would prevent it, which is fantastic. I definitely don't recommend taking out the AR in a Stampede because it's a Springer that's full auto. Generally, if you're doing, a bolt action or a pump action, you're only going to dry fire it with one shot once you're empty. And then you'll notice, oh, I'm empty. I should quit dry firing it. That's bad for my blaster. Whereas in a Stampede, you could dry fire it 5 or 6 times before you realized it, and that could be very detrimental to your blaster. Definitely do not advocate taking out the AR in a Stampede just because of the extra wear and tear. Now, I may have to. If I ever get around to doing a full sealed brass breech for a Stampede, I might have to take out the AR, and that wearies me, but I would definitely seriously pad the plunger head if I did so. So that's kind of the trade-off there is if you're going to take out the AR, you should definitely pad the plunger head. And if you're going to do that, you might as well also upgrade the spring, the catch spring, and brass the barrel. In order to really get the benefit, enough benefit for the wear and tear, in my opinion. A fully modified single-shot blaster with no AR, I think is worth the extra wear and tear, because the range is going to be tripled, probably. And for that, it's worth it. And because these single-shot blasters are usually $1.99 at Goodwill, if it breaks, it's not that big of an investment. Whereas if you end up breaking parts in your Stampede or your Retaliator, your Alpha Trooper, your Longshot, that can be a lot more of an expensive break for a mod that wasn't really that advantageous to begin with. So, a quick note, I wanted to point out that I used a 1/2-inch drill bit and that the barrels do still get an actual tight feel. The darts do not just fall out, even though I did do some boring out of the system. The darts are still in there tight. Now, it's still, the only that first 1/2 inch, and then after that, it's of course loose and darts will fall out, and so you may want to do a brass barrel in here, or a sleeper breech, or preferably a full sealed breech or an angel breech, but just a sleeper breech where you just brass just this tube can work, but it has some finicky issues. I will get into the more complicated brass breeches in a future video, so look forward to that. Okay, there you have it, my particular take on AR removal and how to do it and why to do it and when to do it. Again, these are my opinions. I'm sure many of you have differing opinions, which you are welcome to put in the comment section below. If you think I've just absolutely been incorrect on something or adamant that I'm giving bad advice, go ahead and put that in the comment section below, and if I agree with you, I may re-edit the video. So, I hope this was helpful. Thank you for watching.